team of digital marketing experts as part of a wider agency that basically finds digital marketing solutions for our clients, enterprise level clients ranging from Sperry Topsiders to BJ's Wholesale Club, Eileen Fisher, American Heart Association. Let's see. How many people have heard of DuckDuckGo? How about Bing.com? How about Yahoo.com? How about Google.com? So in order of importance, those are the main search engines that I kind of concern myself with, but mostly entirely Google. So SEO, according to Moz.com, which is an outstanding website, I highly recommend that you make this a part of your daily read. Moz.com defines SEO as a marketing discipline focused on growing visibility in organic search engine results. You're going to hear me say organic a lot. Organic just means natural, just means that it's a result that someone types in that appears that's not a paid advertisement. So if you think of in your mind what a Google search looks like, oftentimes there'll be, your search queries at the very top, there'll be all these blue links underneath. Some of them will say ad, usually about 3 at the top. Used to be a couple at the bottom too, sometimes 1 or 2 along the side. But we're talking about the stuff that comes between all of that, where we're basically at the mercy of Google's algorithm to understand, or rather, we're at the mercy of Google's algorithm to have our website be a better source of information than competitors for the same keywords. So we'll get into what all that means in a second. I don't want to get too in the weeds here. There are 3 main concepts with search engine optimization. There's on-page content, so the stuff on the website itself, what I'll call technical stuff, which I'm only going to touch on very lightly, and becoming an authority. All of those things kind of come together to basically signal to Google and other search engines, and I'm going to say Google as a stand-in for search engines a lot, like Kleenex for tissue, but basically it's for Google how you're signaling to them what your website is all about and why it's more valuable than its competitors for a similar keyword. So on-page content, that's everything visitors see on a website, everything. So not just the text that you'd read, but also whatever images appear, even the menus and the navigation of a website. Every single portion of a website that you see, Google for the most part will see as well. So everything from the quality of the writing, the organization of the nav, this is the clearest signal that you send to visitors and to search engines crawling your site. In terms of technical stuff, we're just talking about understanding what search engines examine to determine what your content is, and how to help them make that determination is the key to a technically sound, search-friendly site. What does all that mean? There are a number of kind of code-based things that you need to make sure your site has in its code so that your own website doesn't get in the way of itself in terms of being visible. I'll give you a quick example. So there's something in this world called a canonical tag. Now, that means that you're telling Google that the address of your website, www.google.com, that's the definitive version of that page. No matter whatever variation you type in to get to that website, http://google.com or www.google.com or google.com/. You've probably seen all these different little variations of a website address. Well, all of those different addresses coalesce around a single one that's always correct. That's the canonical tag. It's canonical refers to, I don't know how many of you are Catholic, when a saint is beatified, they are canonical. Canonical refers to the definitive, holiest version of something. I don't know why they picked that term, but that's a canonical tag. So that's something that's in the code. As content writers, content contributors, your job is going to be to say to the web developer, are the canonicals right? That's technical stuff for SEO. And then becoming an authority. Now this is extremely important. You know, the best website in the world where the technical stuff is sound, where your content is on point, is only going to get you so far. You've got to signal to Google that your website is valuable. The on-page content is a big, big part of it, but you also need to explore the possibility that other websites are going to have very similar information. So in order to kind of countermand that similarity in content, that scope of focus, you have to be cited as a definitive source of information by other websites. It's kind of the my big brother can beat up your big brother aspect of marketing. So the more websites that link back to your site for a similar content subject relative to another, Google will see that the one with more backlinks, generally speaking, are going to be the more authoritative website. So I'm throwing a lot of jargon around. Let's get into some terminology. So first of all, a keyword. That is just a word or phrase that defines the content of a given web page, article, or post. Anything is a keyword. You know, French fries is a keyword. You know, Starbucks is a keyword. I'm a little hungry. Hamburgers are a keyword, etc. You know, but anything is. You know, women's apparel, men's shoes, anything that would encapsulate what everything on a given page is for. Not the whole website necessarily, but just like a given page. The red shoes page on Nordstrom.com. That's what that keyword is, defining that particular page on that website. A link or hyperlink, terms are interchangeable. That refers to basically a line of code or text that can be clicked. We all know what links are. And that results in landing on another page in a web browser. So that's when I say a backlink, I'm saying a link to your site on a domain .com that isn't yours. That's how you build that authority. Part 3 of the pieces of SEO. So a couple of different types of links. The backlinks we talked about. Internal links, that's just a link on a web page that takes you to another page within the same website. You're on Nordstrom.com. There are, you know, there's the red shoes page, the blue shoes page, the orange shoes page. These are some funky shoes. Any one of those is an internal link to another portion of the website. So like a site navigation is full of internal links. If you're reading body text and there's a paragraph and in the middle there's a link, you know, that says, and the orange shoes are totally in season this year, you know, that would be another example of an internal link. Any of those count. And meta tags. So this is something I haven't mentioned yet, but there are all kinds of on-page elements that are defined in a way that Google can find them very quickly. So those are called meta tags. Meta just kind of means everything. So anything can be meta tagged, but the ones that are most important for search engine purposes are title, keywords, and description. So what are those things very briefly? A title is, you know, anything that, or it's the first thing you see when you load up a page. And by the first thing you see, I mean, if you use like say Chrome, who here uses Chrome? Sure. So Chrome is a tabbed browser. So you'll see in the tabs, you know, Nordstrom orange shoes. That's the title of that page. Whatever appears in that tab is a good way to find it. You can mouse over that tab and it'll, you know, display the whole thing. Sometimes those titles can get really long. Orange shoes exclusively at Nordstrom, 70% off, act now. That's not a good title, by the way. You want titles to be short and sweet, concise, so that Google can understand it and not get confused as to what you're trying to define the page as, and readers too. You know, they don't want these titles diluted. You know, the book is called The Great Gatsby. It's not The Great Gatsby, a rich guy with a lot of problems and a girlfriend. The keywords and description, these are things that show up in the source code. I'm not going to get too deep into them, but suffice it to say, when you Google something and you see those blue links on that search engine results page, there's the link and the title. Usually the title is the link too, so orange shoes from Nordstrom. And there's always a little blurb of text. Sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. A good meta description will show up on a search engine results page and will supplement whatever the title is. It'll say, you know, orange shoes from Nordstrom exclusively, 1 week only, 75% off, totally in season. And it serves as almost a little ad for the link to kind of entice you to click through. So it's another way to define what that content on the page is all about. So SERP, those of us in SEO, and people who work in SEO sometimes call themselves SEOs. I don't do that, but my boss does. Like, I'm an SEO. It's like, okay. It's more like I'm in SEO is how I construct it. But SERP stands for Search Engine Results Page, so that's all this stuff. This is all the SERP. So you got your news SERP, your shopping SERP, your video SERP, your images SERP, Search Engine Results Page. And your ranking, and this is something we talk about a lot where I work, that's where your website appears in the SERP relative to other websites for the same kind of search. So, you know, what is SERP is my keyword. This is what's called the answer box. So that's not strictly speaking an organic result because it's in this little box. But this here, this blue link, that is your #1 ranking website, wordstream.com/SERP for what is SERP. And you can see that the title is pretty well constructed. You know, what is SERP? You know, pretty anticipatory title for what that keyword is. What does SERP mean? And you can not really make it out, but there's a little bit of meta description verbiage here, and that's how the SERP kind of comes together. What this is, by the way, just for reference, this is what's called the answer box. This is a new thing Google's doing. Google is trying to keep people on Google more so than navigating around to other websites. So if you ask something that's very easy to answer, like, you know, how old is Ted Danson? Usually it'll just pop up, you know, 103 or however the hell old he is. I don't even know. How old is Ted Danson, Angelica?
I have no idea.
I don't know either. But you would find out instantaneously by using the Google answer box. So that's ranking. Let's talk about content writing for SEO. So virtually any kind of content that goes on the internet at all has some elements in common that you can optimize so that your content gets found better than, say, a competing news organization site, a competing business, take your pick. So that manifests in a lot of different ways. You have press releases, news items, blog posts, static on-site content like an FAQ or a product description page, you know, that little paragraph that accompanies the orange shoes product page on Nordstrom.com, or social media. You know, these all, for the most part, tend to come with elements like a headline or a title, a little description, some keyword tags, body content, internal and external links. You'll find that in just about anything that you're going to be writing for the web. So it's important to know what those are so that you can take advantage of each one of those little niches in a way that lets you better define your content more so than your competitors, one. Two, signals to websites that aren't on your domain that you are a better source of that information than your competitors. And three, that elevates your website's authority and grows your rankings. So let's look at title for a second. This is the most important thing. You know, Google looks at this first, and so do regular people. It's the best opportunity to define your content. So, you know, here's a good example of a meta title: cat food brands, grain-free, organic, and kitten food. I have cats and I like them. So this is from PetSmart.com, and what we want to do here with a title for best practices when you're writing for a website, that title should, first of all, lead off with whatever the most relevant keyword is. So you've got the title, that's the most important thing that defines the page. Within the title, the most important part of the title, you want to lead it off with whatever you want to define the page with, like, as succinctly as possible. So you've got your title first, a tiny little bit of verbiage that kind of expands on what that is, but that's essentially it. Like, that's the primary keyword for this page, cat food brands. And keeping it under 70 characters is important because while this title is decently illustrative, you'll notice that we've got some dots. So first of all, that's not very pleasing aesthetically as this title kind of runs over 70 characters. And also, Anything that doesn't appear past kitten food, if you can't see it, Google can't see it either, and Google is not going to take that into account when factoring in the definition of your page. So whatever brilliant content came after kitten food, it could have been free today only. If Google can't see it, then that's not gonna be associated with the title, and it's not gonna factor into your rankings for cat food brands. The meta description, we defined this already. It's a very common meta tag that you see underneath the title in the SERP, so this is how that works here. And you'll see this is a pretty well-written one. You want to summarize your content using that contextual keyword, so cat food, right up front. And you want this to be 150 characters or so, or less, about twice as long as the title. So you have just enough room to write about what you see here. And then similar to the title, it'll just cut off. It'll just turn into ellipsis. So it's important to be concise, and whether you're writing for the web or whether you're writing for, like, say, a CMS, like a WordPress or whatever back end of a website where you're filling in these little fields, there's always going to be like a title, a description, even sometimes like a keyword tags field when you're entering this stuff, when you're actually uploading content. Be mindful that you only have so much space. Even if the box is huge, it's going to render just like 150 or so characters when you publish it. So keyword tags, just a short list of words or phrases that define your content. This is more important for people, really, than it is for search engines. And the reason being that for the most part, meta keyword tags are routinely ignored by Google. Like, this is a user experience thing for the people reading your content only. So this is important for, like, internal search, as opposed to like an external search engine like Google, like Yahoo, like Bing, like DuckDuckGo, take your pick. Most websites you see have an internal search function. They tend to not be as sophisticated as like Google and these other, multi-billion-dollar companies with these armies of engineers. So, you add little tags to whatever your content is to help define it, so that if someone comes to your website, is just a regular visitor to your website, doesn't necessarily have an agenda, or maybe heard that there's a new article about, water on the slopes of Mars, they'll just search for Mars within the website, and because it's tagged, it's easier to find internally. This is really helpful when you're writing for news. If you're writing a quick little blurb about, a car accident in Pleasantville, you may want to write down, like, say, the streets where it happened, or, if there's someone faint, like if Magic Johnson was in a car crash in Pleasantville, you'd put like Magic Johnson car crash, Pleasantville, maybe a couple of the streets. So this is basically for the reader, not necessarily for search engines, but it's important for search engine optimization. So we talked about how CMS, and that's just a content management system, they have a field for these kind of tags. And just to help you wrap your head around what a keyword tag is, even a hashtag counts as that. A hashtag on Twitter or on Instagram. You're creating a meta keyword when you hashtag that so that other people can find it more easily. So let's talk about body content for a minute. When you're writing content for the web, it's just as important to seed that content with your keywords, your main concepts, in a strategic way, the same as you would your title, your description, your keyword tags, take your pick. So in this completely current article about the iPhone 6S, you can see how it starts with it, right off the bat, iPhone 6S. These, we call it Googlebot, these spiders that crawl these websites automatically, robotically. They give a lot of value to real estate that you're putting your content on your website. The more prominent you're making something, the more prominent Google is going to interpret that content. So that's why you front load your content with relevant keywords. So iPhone 6S is a bunch of this stuff, and you'll see a couple of other little keywords that make their way in the topic sentence of the next paragraph too. Same concept, front load your content, the beginning of your topic sentence, the beginning of paragraphs, subheadings, if you have a longer piece, should include these keywords so that robots and people can find them very easily. Couple, pro tips: don't overstuff that content with keywords. It just becomes very obvious after a while. I like to tell my clients that SEO is a lot like being cool. Like, the harder you try to do it, the less effective it is. So that kind of pertains to writing content for the web as well. We talked about real estate and the placement of these keywords. And the last thing I'll say, and this kind of requires a little bit of subjectivity, depending on what it is you're writing about, whether it's the news or whether it's for e-commerce or, any number of things. Adopt the mindset of your audience. If you want your content to be found, put yourself in the head of the men and women or whatever target audience it is for your given site. Eileen Fisher, I have to get in the head of a 48 to 58-year-old professional woman with a lot of money to throw around. What is she searching the internet for when she's thinking about boxy apparel? It's going to be stuff like, what is tencel? What is boiled wool? What is, upscale attire for women on vacation? And then you work those terms into the content that you're writing so that they kind of chocolate and peanut butter when they search for these terms, and my content is sitting there waiting for them. Gosh, that's another food analogy. I'm just off the hook with that today. Sorry. So internal links tie that content together. It's very important to have internal links within your body content, not just the navigation, although that's important too, but Google sees this series of connections within your site. Those all combine to grow the overall authority of a website because you're helping make this content easier to find. You don't want to do it overly so. Just a couple links per article, maybe once per social media post or so. Angelica will expand on that. And the anchor text should be a keyword defining the content of the link destination. What's your name? What is anchor text? Too slow. Anchor text is just the verbiage that makes up a link. So oftentimes it's something like click here or go here or check this out. Those are bad anchor text examples. Like a good anchor text example would be something like, orange shoes at Nordstrom's are 70% off. That actually is like a jump to what that other page when you land on it will be about versus like click here, which doesn't tell you much of anything, or act now. So you have to get away from a mindset of, how you see a lot of people publish bad anchor text. When you put a link in an article, make sure that that link serves almost as like a little title, like a little meta title for where you're going to go next. That way Google can ascribe that definitional value to where you're going. That improves the value of where you're going and the value of where you are because you're becoming a source of information yourself. External links. Now this kind of gets into how you provide additional information, how you're promoting sharing, how your big brother beats up someone else's big brother. Linking externally is basically how you communicate with these other websites, and oftentimes you'll get a link back in kind. Now that doesn't necessarily happen automatically. It's very helpful to even conduct outreach where, I'll give you an example with BJ's Wholesale Club, a company that we're doing authority building with. That's literally what we're doing, building authority by searching for any website in the entire internet that happened to mention BJ's Wholesale Club that week. And we find them using, sophisticated tools. We just send them an email. Hey man, love your article about Thanksgiving hours and how BJ's Wholesale Club is going to be closed on Thanksgiving. Here's a link to the BJ's Wholesale Club in your area with its holiday hours. So it'd be great if you added that link to your article. It'll help inform your readers, and at the same time, we get a little bit of that kickback, a little bit of authority in kind, because here's this external source signaling to its readers that BJ's Wholesale Club is the definitive source of information for a given subject, in this case, Thanksgiving hours. And for that, if you search for now, Wholesale Club or Price Club near me, all of a sudden you've got a better chance at showing up before like Costco or Sam's Club does, because you've taken the time to appear to make the effort to appear on an external domain. So a couple words about how to code an external text. When you're asked to do this, if you're going to link out to another source, like say you're citing a source in a news article, about, county government, like there's a court hearing and there's a link to, the court page itself that you want to put in the article because that would help your readers. You want to code that as, and this is just real fancy, so just, you'll get the deck later to examine this, target blank. The reason being, target means where you're going to land. Blank means that you're not leaving your site to go to this other page. You're going to open a new tab and, off you go. I mean, I'm sure every one of you has done that, where you click a link and instead of navigating away from your page, it just pops up a new page or pops up a new tab more commonly now. But that's just a quick word on how external links work. And, oh, wow, I'm out of slides. Yes, question. What's your name?
Ashe.
Hi, I'm Matt.
So I was wondering, to code your external link, what you would do is you put that at the end of your link?
Well, there are a couple ways to do it. So this is like if you were in the back end of your website, like when you're dealing with a text field and you're adding body content to it, usually you're using what's called a WYSIWYG tool. So there'll be like bold, italic, maybe the font, a bunch of other stuff. Usually there's a little button that says HTML2 or source, and you click that and all of a sudden it goes from like, text with colors and links and stuff to a bunch of, codey jibber jabber. So if you were to go to the HTML portion of it, you would select, in the jibber jabber, placing this within the code. Now, WYSIWYG tools, what you see is what you get, tend to be a lot easier to where if you're coding an external link in body content, you write out what you want to say, 70% off orange shoes at Nordstrom, you'd highlight it. Usually among those tools, there'll be something that says link. You can click it. And usually when you do that, you'll have the option for what the target is. And usually it's either target window or target blank. So you'd want to choose target blank. Every content management system is different. So I would recommend just like drafting that out, publishing it and playing with it, just seeing if what you wrote when you add the link pops up a new tab or not. And if it doesn't, just keep playing with the settings on that link button until it does what you want. Usually right-clicking it will help too. That may like show a couple of options that you can choose among. Okay. So that's kind of how you do that. And, 7:30 on the dot, and I'm fresh out of slides. Any other questions? That was a good question. Yes, go ahead.
So, for instance, if I were to type radio show within the search engine, so whatever radio outlet pops up first, that means they have authority, like if Z100 is the first one?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
So there are a few things that factor into that. There is the authority of every site on the internet, but Google also knows where you are. Either because you set your location to be tracked or it just reads your IP address, wherever you are, and it will try to feed you the most relevant results possible. The whole point of Google is for people to use Google. It's not to find information. They're trying to run a business. So they want to find information that's most relevant to you. So when you're typing in radio show, you're trying, or Google is trying to serve up results that are going to give you the best experience, which usually means factoring in not just the on-site, the technical stuff, the authority build, but where you are can factor in too.
Okay. That's why, if I noticed whenever I'm on Facebook and I'm here on campus, it would have, go to Gyro World in Pleasantville.
Mm-hmm.
I won't see that when I'm at home with that page.
That's right, because when you're using a browser, more often than not, two things are happening. One, you're enabling location tracking. So you get results that'll serve kind of where you are. And two, most people on their browsers have cookies enabled. Anyone ever heard of cookies? In the context of everyone knows what that is? Just a little piece of code that tracks where you've been. Google will base its future results on what it knows about your history up to date. It's a little bit creepy, actually. I personally disable cookies on all my browsers just because I'm, an old man and I don't like Google to know what I'm, Googling necessarily day to day. But yeah, that's how that works. Yes.
Say, maybe this is a little off, but speaking of cookies and creepy and where Google knows where you are, I didn't set up anything, and on my phone it's now saying, there's no traffic, you'll make it to, and it says my address in 9 minutes. And that freaks me out because I didn't ask to know that.
But you have GPS enabled, and the GPS enabling is connected to your browser, and the browser is connected to Maps, and Maps asked if it can use your location. And
Where's this happening? Like I'm being spied on.
On Wednesdays and Thursdays when I have class, it says it'll take you 15 minutes to get to Pleasantville.
Yeah.
Only on Wednesdays and Thursdays. Because I come to school.
Right, during the week, I work in Barton, but it says, no traffic, 15 minutes.
yeah, and and it's only 2016. Imagine what that's going to be like in 2026 or 2036. Where we won't even have phones anymore. We'll have some embeddable contact lens that's telling us what we want for lunch before we even know. Did you have a question?
No, just something like what you're talking about. Like, so I'm from Nigeria,
Mm-hmm.
and then back home we thought everyone in the U.S. had chips in their heads or their hands or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because we used to hear that, they have chips open the gates, chips do this, chips do that. So I thought like everything had gone like to the extreme already.
Not yet. We still have to attach them to get into where we're going. But it's, like my kitty cat has a chip in his neck right here in case he runs off like a moron, So it's scary. There's a movie with Sylvester Stallone. It's terrible. It's called Demolition Man, and it's set like 80 years in the future. And he was cryogenically frozen, and then he wakes up 70 years later. And one of the things that he finds out immediately is that they chipped him, and that they know everything about where he is and where he's going and what his heart rate is and all this other weird stuff. So, it's not for me to say whether or not that's a good thing, but that's where the capability is going, if not what we're going to wind up doing. And that's my futurist lecture on the day. Any other questions? Okay, thanks guys. I'm going to turn it over to Angelica then.
So, my name is Angelica, and I'm a social media and content strategist at PMX Agency in New York City. And a lot of what I do is not particularly what Matt does, but it all has elements kind of as one. Here, I'll explain it. So social media, content, and SEO, they're all related. More and more as we're kind of going through the deck, it'll kind of make sense a little bit more. They all should be supported by each other. It's kind of like a circle, like a never-ending circle. Let's see here. Okay. And a lot of what I do is craft content specifically for social media. A lot of the content that we try to tell our clients that does the best in either Google search rankings or it's getting a lot of engagement on their social profiles has to do a lot with storytelling. Storytelling is a huge element of a content strategy. It's probably one of the most important things on a social media strategy, just because in so many different ways, we can, as people, relate to narratives. They help shape our entire lives. I mean, you guys are writers. I mean, people tell stories. People relate to stories. We always want to design our content, whether it's like a social media post or a blog post, anything like that. It always has to be mobile optimized because, how everybody's always on their phone. I mean, I don't have the stat here, but I think it's over 70% of all traffic comes from mobile. So all website traffic, all social traffic comes from mobile. I mean, more and more we're seeing that we're always on our phones anyway. So what we want to do is make sure that all the content that we're putting out there in either the form of social media posts and blogs is to make sure that it's optimized for mobile. And that means, you know, the copy, so having the character limit set, shortened lengths. More and more we're seeing a lot of videos on the social feed, and we want to make sure that they're optimized for when people aren't having the sound on. So now you'll see a lot of your social feed. The videos have some text overlay just for, again, for those people that don't have the sound on. You always want to make sure that your content is visually appealing, and that it's always evolving. A cool kind of quote that we like to tell our clients, I mean, so many times we want to make our post go viral. We want our blog post to go viral. That's not the way to look at it anymore. The way to look at it now is that you have to make something of value to your audience. What you're tailoring, what kind of content you're writing, what kind of things that you're putting out there, you want to make sure that it's valuable to your audience. That's probably the most important takeaway of this class, probably. So again, here just kind of what we do, how to frame our content strategy. So we use compelling visuals, a meaningful content mix in the sense that, you know, we'll share our blog posts, we'll share anytime we were mentioned in any sort of press release, different types of third-party videos and images. So you don't want to make it like it's all your stuff that you're putting out there. You want to have a nice mix of everything. You want to leverage different types of content, especially visuals, for different platforms. So here, this is what we kind of like to tell our clients too. So we use Facebook for reach to reach the most amount of people that we possibly can, because Facebook, everybody's on Facebook, or mostly everybody's on Facebook. Twitter for any sort of like timeliness, you know, live events, things like that. Snapchat more recently is kind of, you know, showing the behind the scenes and the fun and the personality of it. You're seeing more and more that brands are on Snapchat, which is pretty cool. And then Instagram for beauty, looks, images, very visual. And then you also want to make sure that your distribution strategy, so how many times a week you post, what kind of post type it is, whether it's an image or a link, the timing of it, if you're posting something at night or you're posting something in the morning. You want to make sure that you're doing it so that it fits your audience. And then always kind of including some sort of CTA, call to action, and a sense of community, or again, that whole storytelling arch of it. So I'm just gonna kind of briefly go through this. So again, what I do is I work with a lot of retail clients, but I also have a lot of nonprofit clients. And the nonprofit clients are probably the hardest to kind of craft stories around, because it's so sensitive, the content that you're trying to put out there, because a lot of your audience is so deeply connected to the cause. So you don't want to exploit anybody. You don't want to, you know, you kind of have to like dance around the subject a little bit. So some tips for kind of engaging storytelling and kind of crafting that in your content is just to ask questions. So, you know, on social, if you're just asking your audience, you know, what did you love about like last night's debate? Like, what did you hate? You know, utilizing and leveraging new social media platform features. I don't know if you guys have ever seen carousel ads. There's an example here on Facebook. You know, having others tag you in Instagram posts. I know a lot of people do that. Also kind of making sure that you're always responding to negative feedback, positive feedback. You always want to keep that sense of community open. You don't want to just put something out there and then if somebody's saying, oh, great job, like I love what you're doing, you don't want to kind of just ignore that. You always want to address things and always reshare good content. And then we'll talk a little bit about social media influencers. Has anybody had any experience with influencers? So we'll talk about it when we get to a couple slides. So an example of a great storytelling for a brand across social, across like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, is Sweetgreen. They're like a salad bar, and I think they're all over the country now. So they have this campaign. It's called Make America Healthy Again. Obviously a kind of clear play on Donald Trump's, Make America Great Again. But so what they did was they distributed these baseball caps to all users like in in their stores. They gave it to social media influencers who would either wear it on, social media, or, just wear it around. It'd be like free advertising for them. And they used a custom hashtag as well to kind of get some user-generated stuff that you'll see kind of on the bottom here. And this deck is pretty heavy, so you guys can, when you get it, maybe take a look at it closer. So this is the Facebook carousel ad that I was talking about. So basically putting your storytelling in different formats on social. So here we have Project Repat, Repat. So they take old clothes and they make quilts out of them. So it shows like the storytelling, oh, this is, my child, and I'm giving her this quilt that I made out of all my old clothes. So this is just another format of just showing the aspect of storytelling. Here we have another brand, Smashbox. So a lot of what brands are doing is using storytelling with a social media influencer. So influencers are people that have large social followings, either on the blog or on their social media channels. And basically they get paid to showcase different products and the like. So here, Smashbox uses a social media influencer, I forget her name, but they use her on Instagram to kind of storytelling about like her whole life and like what her beauty hacks are and her favorite spots are. So it's just a different form of content in the overarching storytelling frame. This is actually one of our clients. So Super Soccer Stars is a children's soccer camp. And we recently implemented Super Soccer Stories. So again, another way to kind of tell the stories behind the coaches and some parents. And we used, again, like long form posting. You'll see that it's longer here. We kind of space it out so that, you have to click read more. So influencers. A lot of what I do is that on behalf of my brand, I reach out to different social media power users, people that have hundreds of thousands of followers on social media, really engaged audience on their blogs, etc. So we're using influencer work for one of our nonprofit organizations called Paralyzed Veterans of America. And it's not widely like used in the nonprofit space because it's always such a kind of a touchy subject for a lot of influencers. But what we're finding is a lot of the influencers are more than happy to kind of showcase like, oh, they're doing good and they're partnering with nonprofit organizations. So for PVA, for Paralyzed Veterans of America, we went ahead and leveraged animal influencers, so pet influencers, so those famous dogs that you see like all over, Instagram and Facebook. We also using college influencers, so people that kind of have a big say on their college campuses, travel influencers with disabilities, and parent bloggers to kind of raise awareness and to ultimately, educate their audience and drive donations. So here we just have an example of Smiley the dog. He works with different brands, whether they're social media influencers or other nonprofit organizations. And we have Manny the Frenchie here. Again, you always want to approach them lightly. It's a very touchy subject for a lot of influencers. Here we have just different types of content. Here we did an ebook. There's an example of kind of on-page content that this lives on the website. Then we have an example of a blogger who blogged kind of like an infographic style, like Pinterest style. And then he explained it in his blog post there. And by the way, a lot of these influencers are using keywords. They're using a lot of the content tips that Matt was talking about earlier, the content writing tips, rather. Here's an example of a college influencer. So Procter & Gamble hosted a hashtag College Speak Twitter party. So they teamed up with different social media influencers that happen to be in college, and they were invited to participate in this contest for a chance to win a gift card. So just different ways that you see different types of content being leveraged across social, on blogs. So another huge part of having a really good content strategy is visuals. That's probably why this deck is pretty visual, because this is what I do all day. I look at the social feeds, analyze them, make sure that this is what we want. We want to tell our clients, like, this is this company's doing this right. Do this. Do more of this. So the Honest Company, they excel at kind of blending imagery. So a lot of what you'll see on a lot of social feeds is a company posting an image, and then at the bottom it'll say like the company brand. You want to not do that too much, right? I mean, it gets to a point where it's like, okay, it's too much. You kind of want to just share natural images, not so much curated all the time. Making sure that your text overlay is kind of minimal. Just leveraging a variety of different images, but making sure that it's all kind of visually appealing, that it's all the same, it's all on brand. A lot of clients come to us and they're like, we have all these images and we're posting them, like, why aren't we standing out in the space? And a lot of it has to do with a lot of the inconsistent images that they're posting. They're not sticking to one color scheme. They're not sticking to one brand voice. It's just, sometimes it's a mess. So the Honest Company does a great job if you guys want to take a look at them as well. Here I have some examples. SoulCycle does a great job. Even though they do have some text overlay, it's you could see it from like the feed when you kind of zoom out. Taco Bell, great stuff. And American Red Cross, also a nonprofit. They're leveraging a lot of storytelling on there. You could see a lot of like real people, and once you click on some of their posts, you can kind of see they tell the story and everything like that. This is kind of here. So Whole Foods, I was talking about having not heavily branding your images. Whole Foods, their whole Instagram feed has no branded on it, but it all kind of goes back to their brand identity, so it works. So like they're not trying to be something that they're not at the same time, but they're using all the different aesthetics that their audience can relate to. Video is another big thing that we come across as being a pain point for a lot of our clients. So leveraging video or even just resharing video is also, it's a good thing to do just because it's such a huge part of the social space now. I think there was a quote in the beginning of the deck saying in 5 years, the Facebook feed's gonna be all video. So it's a lot of brands are scrambling to kind of pump out videos, and at the same time, you always wanna make sure that you're being authentic, you're like I said, kind of sticking with the same visual brand scheme that you have going on, making it optimized for search. It's a big thing that we come across as well. So this is pretty detailed, and you guys will have this to kind of pour through at another date. So for Paralyzed Veterans of America, they came to us and they're like, how can we leverage video to better, make people more aware of our cause? Well, we gave them some video content ideas about like being wheelchair accessible, and they're mostly informational. So they're how-tos, they're tips, and you see that they're very snackable. They're not lengthy. They're all kind of staying in a certain character limit. I don't know if any of these play, but I don't think so. Here's just another way to kind of leverage video on different channels. So kind of posting a video on YouTube and then advertising it, or sharing it rather, on Pinterest. So some of the tips that I have here for kind of creating and writing content, you always want to be engaging. You want to engage your audience. Ask them questions. Make it so that it's authentic as possible. If it applies, make it local. Be on trend. I mean, so much of what we see is a lot of everything, this is trending, this is not trending. Try to stay ahead of it in terms of just looking at what's trending on Facebook or what's trending on Twitter, and try to leverage that content into your writing topics. Be inspiring. Follow a timeline. Again, you know, you don't want to, the worst thing that we see a lot of clients do is adopt a social media strategy and then they don't follow through with it. They will post maybe once a week, twice a week sometimes. You want to follow a timeline. You want to be as efficient as possible. You want to be as frequent as possible, as it makes sense for your brand. You want to have a strong content mix, so like storytelling, video, images, links, blog posts, everything. And then just optimizing your images to make it so that, you know, it's visually appealing and that it's on brand. The next few slides that I have here, it's kind of interesting. We're talking a lot about the future of social and nonprofit. So for one of our clients, American Heart Association, they kind of tasked us to come up with different examples of how they see nonprofit coming into social media in the future. So you guys have probably heard of AR. It's basically like it's Pokemon Go. So it's like your Snapchat filter. It's something that's not third dimensional, but it's augmented. So some brand examples that I have here. If you go on Sephora, they have a virtual artist, so it'll scan your face and then you can kind of try on different types of makeup. Virtual reality is when you're actually putting on a device and that it's actually all third dimensional. I don't know if I don't think it'll play. No. So you guys heard of Tom's, the shoes? So they have in some of their like flagship stores, they'll have, I don't know, is there sound? Maybe not. We'll just kind of go through it. And they show you the whole, what happens when you buy Tom's.
I started Tom's back in 2006.
So it gives you the whole backstory.
Didn't have shoes, and they needed shoes to go to school.
And this is all virtual reality. So this is all, you're watching this when you're at the store with your device, whether it's like a Google or Samsung box thing. I forget what they call it. But it's a whole experience. They're meant to be very experiential. That's why it's 4 minutes. They're engaging you. Again, storytelling is such a big part of anything you're putting out there.
One of my favorite moments on a giving trip is when we arrive at the school and the children are all there waiting to greet us.
So there's an emotional aspect too, you know. I mean, you feel like you're there and you're experiencing for yourself. This isn't necessarily a nonprofit example, but it just shows you how a lot of brands are leveraging like community initiatives into their newer forms of social media, newer forms of content, such as virtual reality. But yeah, by the way, all the links in this PowerPoint are they're linkable. Like they're all you can just click through and then they'll show up. Another kind of example is UNICEF. They created an 8-minute sort of 360-degree film, again, virtual reality, about the Syrian refugee crisis. So the link's there. I highly recommend checking it out. Here we have gamification and wearables. So the example that we found was most applicable is that UNICEF partnered with Target to give kids these wearable fitness bands, like a Fitbit. But you know, they're kid friendly. They're not too like intense. They don't like show your heart rate, and you know, they're just saying how many like steps you have, and they'll have like cute little like bands for like Star Wars. I know they had another sort of kid brand on there too. So they're trying to make you know, getting active for kids more actionable, and I thought it was a great example. Again, I have a whole resource page at the end of this presentation with more examples. They're all linkable. So I thought we could kind of just take the remaining few minutes to go over some cool social media strategies that we've seen out there. So eBay launched their eBay Unboxed campaign, where they used an influencer, a really high-profile influencer, Carly Kloss, who is a model, and they had her kind of blast on social media, made videos of it, of her trying to find stuff for her new apartment. So it was very fun, pretty engaging. You know, like tweet item links, like what do you think I should have in my apartment? I don't know if this video works either, but really cool. If you guys could check it out, it would definitely be worth your while. Here we just have another big brand, Chase, using an influencer, the Holderness family. They were they made some video back a couple years ago called Christmas Jammies. I don't know if anybody's seen it. I didn't, but they have a huge subscriber base. I think it's like over 500,000 or 600,000 people. So Chase partnered with them to kind of create these videos to make banking seem a little bit more simple and more relatable to families and people, especially parents. Here we have MGM Resort. They were one of the first to use the Snapchat geofilters to kind of create this omni-channel experience throughout their social feeds. So they actually had the ghost on one of their things in Las Vegas, in one of their buildings. They were blasting it on their other social media channels. Like, if you're in Vegas this weekend, make sure to like see our filters. And it was a pretty cool example of just how like big brands are getting into newer forms of social media, and it's working. Here, kind of another influencer example. Old Navy partnered with 50 different influencers across the country to showcase kind of like street style. I know street style is kind of like a big fashion term now that we hear a lot in working with our clients. So they picked big influencers from all 50 states, and then they showcased them. I think it was over 50 days. So another just cool example of brands using influencers to kind of get their brand out there in the social space. Another Snapchat example. I just think Snapchat's pretty fun, especially when brands get to use it because they have so much money, so they can really take advantage of it. Bless you. So this is all kind of messed up, the text, but basically they use Snapchat as a storytelling platform to leverage different sorts of influencers across the country, specifically on college campuses, to engage in some sort of giveaway as well. This is all just like reference, so some tips for video. This is social media community management best practices. So just, like I said, acknowledging your fans when they, comment on your posts and stuff, and leveraging keywords in your posts. These are some of the resources that we use. Most of them are free, so if you want to they're all linkable. And then these are just some more examples that we came up with for the future of social media and nonprofit. And that's all.
We have about 10 minutes or so for questions. Anyone have questions?
Sure.
I thought the Making America Healthy Again kind of had a negative thing to it, because people that don't like Trump or want to wear the cap or something, they would just feel it's somewhat linked to.
Well, you always have to kind of be careful about what you're putting out there, especially as it's becoming kind of like politically incorrect, politically correct. But Sweetgreen is a great example of knowing their audience. So they knew that their audience would kind of have a positive tone to it, because they are all health conscious, they're all fit conscious. So to them, it was just taking a negative thing and making it positive, or however you like to think about his slogans.
I realized like in the beginning of using like hashtags on Instagram and under my photos, I would receive more likes, but I realized it's not necessarily the case anymore. Would you like know why? Am I using the wrong words, or is it that hashtags aren't like?
So on Instagram you're talking about?
Yeah.
So Instagram got, Instagram is part of Facebook, right? And Facebook and Instagram are constantly updating their algorithms. And a lot what was happening was these hashtags were a lot of bots. So fake Instagram accounts kind of getting really spammy. It was clogging up the feed. So I know that Instagram kind of implemented some sort of algorithm change to kind of make it so that when you hashtag, only the most, I guess back to Matt was saying, the most authoritative content comes up. So in terms of likes, I mean, I know a lot of people that do the like 20 different hashtags, right? And Instagram kind of looks at that now as spammy. So a lot of what a lot of influencers are doing just on the Instagram space, they're trying to kind of cross-promote a lot of their content on different channels. So let's say I have like a blog post or a picture of something that I created and it's on Instagram. I'll go ahead and blast that on Facebook. I'll go ahead and blast that on Twitter. I'll put it on the blog. So it's kind of, now Instagram is kind of like a Google in the sense that it's taking a lot of different sorts of content and that are off-site and making it more so that it's more authoritative. So necessarily that would be a good thing to do if you're trying to get some more likes. I would probably suggest blasting it on different social channels.
Even if like, cause I know now like when you type in a hashtag, it'll show how many, the amount of people that used it.
Yeah.
Would that work? I don't
So a lot of like what we do for our clients, so let's say you're hashtagging like, hashtag like, winter boots. That hashtag is so populated, it's so overused that like you'll get lost in that feed. Automatically if you're not like one of the bigger brands that is putting paid support behind it, etc. So what we like to do for some of the brands is make it so that they're more niche hashtags. So it'd be like hashtag winter boots for women who live in Connecticut. It's long, but it gets to the point where if somebody's actually gonna like, I mean sometimes I search shoppable stuff on Instagram, and when you search that, those hashtags, maybe with like 4 posts, they'll come up. So maybe making like the bigger, broader hashtags a little bit more specific and more niche, that could kind of attract a more like dedicated audience, I would say, maybe. Sure. And, oh, sorry, yeah.
What would you say is like the best time frames for posting on Instagram? Well, specifically Instagram, I guess.
Instagram? Okay, so yeah, I mean, we get this a lot. We, as what we do is we use a lot of different tools to kind of automate our posts so that we're not sitting, at like 8 p.m. trying to post something for our clients because, who wants to do that? But typically they say that Tuesdays and Wednesdays are the best. Mornings for, I'm talking about kind of the metro area, tri-state area, commuting hours are really popular. So people, when they just wake up until like 9 or 10 o'clock when they get to work and they have to get busy. Lunch, I mean, people on their lunch hours are always kind of, browsing on their phones, going through their social feeds. And then the commute home. And then Instagram particularly has like a big boost late at night because a lot of people are sitting in their beds or sitting on their couches kind of scrolling through the feed. So honestly, we just Google like best times for posting, and a lot of what's out there right now is pretty legit, just in terms of getting like best posting times, best posting days, character limits, photo sizes for different like social platforms. So if you just Google all that stuff, it's all pretty relevant. It's all like standardized at this point, that all the information that you're going to find is not like, it's very authoritative, and Google's going to give you the most authoritative link that like Matt was talking about. You're not going to get some like, you know, Reddit post where someone's like, I think that they're mostly on Instagram like during lunch, you know, like they're all, everything's pretty standardized. So just Google whatever, you know, and whatever comes up in the first like page, definitely like gonna be right.
When would you feel you're fulfilled in this job you're doing? Like, with what clients do you aspire to work with?
I mean, I'm a big foodie, so hopefully I get a big kind of like either food brand or local restaurants in New York and New Jersey and Connecticut. I would love to do that. I would also, I like working with nonprofits. It's a challenge, kind of like what I said. If you guys take a look like back through the deck, there's a lot of detail in it on how to kind of craft specifically for nonprofits, because it's so challenging that these nonprofit clients, we have 3 or 4, I think we have 4. Yeah, we have 4. So they come to us, and social media is one of their biggest like pain points sometimes. One, because a lot of these nonprofits have local chapters. So what they're finding is a lot of overlap between, like, let's say like the national brand on social versus like the local handle on social. So how do we close that gap? How do we kind of make sure that what we're putting out there, they're gonna like reshare, and they're gonna like retweet, or they're gonna use our sources rather than something that they might have put out. It's definitely a challenge, and that's what I think I would say I would want to do. We are hiring, just throwing it out there. Feel free to email me if you know anybody or are interested in becoming part of the agency. We do have internship programs as well in the summer. Yeah, that's it. Any other questions? Or feel free to like shoot me over an email if you have anything like specific about social or nonprofit or anything related to like content. Matt's your SEO guy, but I'll be your social content person.
Is your email in the slides? 'Cause I'll put this
Yes, it's in the first slide on our introduction. Cool.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
And I guess at this point, I mean, we're